Good evening, students. Today we'll be looking into research in biopsychology, and we start with the first subtopic, family studies. So, for many decades, we've always debated between nature versus nurture. Which one of the both is responsible for the behavior of individuals, right? So, some of the scientists believed that genetics played a major role in why people behaved in certain way, whereas there were other individuals in contrary who pointed out for the environmental factors as to be the reason for the way people behave. So, Sir Francis Galton was one of the individuals who reiterated the role of genetics as to being the causal factor why people behave in certain ways, and he followed that um, justification by giving a research. So he observed 977 famous families of England and 977 ordinary families, and he found that the children of the famous families were also grew up to become famous and intelligent, and children who belonged to ordinary families were ordinary citizens. So hence he concluded that intelligence runs through families, right? So Sir Francis Galton believed that genetics contributed majorly for the intelligence or for the different behavioral factor or cognitive component of different individuals, right? Followed by that, we have Calicak study. It was given by Goddard, Goddard, right? So the best of the early investigation of a bad family tree, Calicak study. So it was established in the year 1914. So this is a study where the author took about the soldier Kalikak. So there's a soldier who's named as Kalikak, and he married twice. The first marriage, he married a feeble-minded individual who also gave birth to children who became or developed feeble-mindedness. Later, they also became sexual perverts and drunkards, right? So, an individual who married a feeble-minded person, the children were also eventually leading to a not much bright future. Whereas when he married another normal women, children from the second wife became teachers, lawyers, and administrators. Although this might sound very um, biased and stereotypical, this was a study which was done in the early 1900s, right? So if we have to let's remove all the stereotypical terms here and just take the essence of this research, which was the role of genetics. So here the role of women was reiterated time and again, but recent research studies shows that genetics in general would mean the genetics that is received from both the parents equally play a major role in how the children develop behaviors, right? Moving on, the Minnesota twin study. So this is one of the most important studies done over the years. So Minnesota twin study talks about how identical twins are more alike than fraternal twins. So if you go about and explore in different, especially in the abnormal psychology discipline of psychology, you'll be able to witness how many mental health disorders have a likeliness between identical twins. So if one identical twin is um, diagnosed with schizophrenia, there's a highly likely that the other twin might also be, or else at least has the vulnerability to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, right? So the percentage is pretty high than when compared with fraternal twins, right? So in terms of anxiety, fear, leadership, obedience, empathy, aggression, confidence, etc., identical twins are much more alike, right? So here there's a correlation given. So the relationship between two components, right? So the relationship, the extent to which cousins are related to each other genetically is 0.15. Brothers and sisters are 0.50. Fraternal twins are 0.70. Identical twins are 0.90, right? Which means a um, almost perfect relationship when it comes to identical twins. That is how highly correlated the twins are in terms of their behaviors, their decision making, the leadership qualities, etc. So there's a case study which is also very famous, the case of Gerald Loewy and Mark Newman. So apparently Gerald Loewy and Mark Newman were twins who were separated by birth, at birth, sorry. So they were reunited by a by a firefighter who worked mutually for the both of them. So the firefighter knew both Gerald Loewy and Mark Newman, and one fine day he looks Gerald Loewy and starts thinking that he looks like Mark Newman, and then the both twins meet each other. And the findings that came across was very interesting, because although they lived separately and their lives, they grew up separately, they had taken up remarkably similar paths. Like Louis went to college studying forestry, Newman also liked trimming trees. So both men were unmarried, found the same kind of women attractive, they shared similar hobbies, enjoyed hunting, they liked the movies with the same actor, professional wrestling, they liked Chinese food, they drank the same brand of beer. So there were so many similarities between the two twins who were separated by at birth. So even though their environmental factors were different, their genetics dominated, right? So there's also alternate debate how nurture can also change or have an impact in how an individual might turn out to be, right? Yes, so as I said earlier, even though the twins were separated at birth, even though the individuals, both the twins had separate environment that they were brought up, they had highly striking similarities in terms of many significant parts of life, right? So far we had seen how genetics play a role. There has been equally justifying evidences for how environment can also influence the way an individual behaves. So again, a study on identical twin had taken place. So here, in one study, identical twins were reared apart in two different environments. One was brought up in an urban environment and the other in a rural environment. The one brought up in urban environment happened to have higher IQ than the one brought up in rural environment, right? So there are also multiple studies which talk about socio-economic status as well, SES. So individuals who are brought up or reared by families with high socio-economic status happen to also develop or increase their IQ points significantly. All right. Now enrichment studies was done by Skeel, SKEEL. He selected about 30 children from orphanage, and he collected their details in terms of sex, age and IQ. Okay, and he ensured the inclusion criteria was that all of them had the same sex, age and IQ. So from the 30 children, he removed 15 from orphanage and they were brought up under the care of mentally challenged women who showered love and attention, whereas the remaining 15 were placed back in the orphanage. So after 2 years, it has been found that the IQ of the children who were brought up by mentally challenged women increased by 29 points, which is a very significant hike. And IQ of the children who remained in the orphanage decreased by 26 points. So this shows how the environment an individual is reared or grown or nurtured around has a high role to play in terms of improving their genetics. So an individual might be bestowed with low intelligence genetically, but if the environment is constructed in a way that it is highly stimulating, there's a high chances that an individual, even though he or she might be genetically in a disadvantage place, if he or she is put in a very environmentally advantageous, nurturing, stimulating, successful environment, there are high chances that he or she will develop his or her capabilities. That is what enrichment study proves to be. Now, environment deprivation studies have also showed that reduced intelligence can be reduced by high levels of chaos and noise in the home and lack of environmental stimulation like parental attention and reward for success. If you could see a lot of dysfunctional homes with different kinds of problems, let's say divorce, divorced parents, or domestic violence, or permissive parenting, where both the parents um, are highly they are less likely to involve in the children's decision. So that is permissive parenting, right? So in permissive parenting, these parents are less likely, or they are barely ever present in a child's life, right? So all of different kinds of parenting styles and parenting dynamics can play a major role in how it can affect the intelligence, not just cognitive way but also emotional intelligence. How he or she will develop into an adult, and how he or she will process the emotions that they're going through, is highly influenced by the kind of environment given by the parents in childhood. So that is what environmental deprivation means. So all of these pointers are very important. So we conclude by saying that both nature and nurture play an important role, and I would like to bring the point that Kurt Lewin had proposed, that the behavior of an individual is a function of person and the environment, right? Which means that behavior is originated from the dynamics between both genetics and environment, right? It is not particularly that only genetics plays a major role or only environment plays a role. Both genetics and environment plays equally significant role in determining the kind of an individual that a person will become. Yes, so I hope you understood this particular session. Thank you, class.